Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic? Let's do it. What is a strange phenomenon or experience that you saw that made you say, "What the?" Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
Two things. Apparently, I sat up in bed one night when my wife and I were visiting her parents. I started talking to a chair in the corner of the room. When my wife asked me what I was doing, I said, "I'm just talking to this guy." Her former boyfriend had done the same when he had spent the night when she was still living with her parents. Two, I was walking home in a little storm. It was quite dark and nobody was in the streets. Suddenly I heard someone say my name behind me. Not yelling or anything, just saying my name very casually. I turned around and no one was there. When I turned around to keep walking, a roof tile came flying through the air. If I hadn't stopped for just a second, it would have hit me in the head. I'm not religious, but I did send a thank you to whoever was watching over me. I woke up from a nightmare and turned around to see my partner snuggling me. Her ear was twitching a little bit, but she looked peaceful, so I didn't want to wake her up. I rolled over onto my back and stared at the ceiling, trying to fall back asleep. To my horror, the bedroom door opened and my partner walked in. I just stared at her in the dark for several seconds and then said, "What the?" She turned around, saw my eyes wide in panic, and asked if I was okay. I looked frantically next to me where I'd literally just seen her and then back to where she was standing. She kept asking if I was okay, and I said, "I just saw you next to me." She told me that it was impossible because she had been in the bathroom for the last 30 minutes. I kept insisting that she had been sleeping right next to me, but gave it up and turned over to try to sleep again. She got in bed and fell asleep within a few minutes. As my eyes started to close, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I became aware of a weird weight on my side of the bed, almost as if someone had just stepped on the mattress. I knew I wasn't imagining it because my foot was starting to slide down the incline that the weight was creating. My mind was racing, and I couldn't bring myself to look. I felt the bed compress back to normal and could hear shuffling across the carpet. When we both woke up, she asked me what I saw lying next to me. I told her, "I saw you. Same hairstyle, same freckles, same lips." She finally confessed that when I'm at work, the same incident happens to her when she's laying down. It creeps me the F out. One time when I was around the age of 10, my grandparents let me stay home alone while they took my siblings to watch a hockey game. I distinctly remember that I was home alone because it was the first time I was ever left alone, and I felt so cool for having the autonomy. The neighbor girl I hung out with, who was probably around the age of 8, was the only person there with me, so I wasn't completely alone, but we were only aware of the presence of both of us. We lived in a very small town where crime was practically non-existent. It was tranquil. A mass majority of people would leave their front doors unlocked at nighttime because nothing suspicious ever really happened. Anyways, we were sitting in my grandma's living room about an hour after them being gone when all of a sudden we heard someone. It was as if there was another person in the room, perhaps hiding behind something, that said meow, not imitating the sound, not trying to make it sound like a cat, literally just saying meow. Now, me and the neighbor girl were mid-conversation when this happened. I knew it wasn't her playing a trick on me because I was literally looking at her mouth move as it happened. There was no TV on. The doors were locked. Our faces both went white. Never in my life had I been more scared. We scoured the house to look for something, anything, that would explain this. We looked in the living room and tore it apart to figure it out, as it sounded like it was in the room with us. It wasn't even a faint noise. It was as plain and clear as day. It wasn't a toy. I'm positive it was a person. To this day, there's still no explanation. Back in the early 90s, my mom had a job as the director of a historical museum in my very small hometown. The museum was housed in a large old mansion built in the early 1800s and was rumored to be haunted. It also didn't attract many visitors, so 99% of the time my mom would be there by herself. One day when I was 11 or 12, my mom asked me to come watch the museum for an hour while she attended a town meeting where she was invited to talk. I was all alone in the large old house, but it didn't bother me since I had spent a lot of time there and was used to it. I did my rounds of the museum. then unlocked the museum's only door and kept myself busy drawing a picture at the front desk. All of a sudden, I heard a loud bam from the next room. I ran in to investigate and discovered that the heavy wooden panel that covered the fireplace had been pulled out into the middle of the room and pushed over. I was terrified. The fireplace and chimney were completely sealed up, so it was impossible that it was a gust of wind, an animal, or someone either trying to get in or out through the chimney. The museum had only the one door, which I had been sitting by the whole time, so I knew that it wasn't a stray visitor who wandered in when I wasn't looking. The panel was also very heavy. Even if I had bumped up against it during my rounds, which I didn't, I wouldn't have tipped it over. And that still didn't explain why it was in the middle of the room. I was so scared that I ended up calling the police, and thankfully my mom arrived along with them. They investigated the rooms and found absolutely nothing that would explain the panel being pushed out. I also had to demonstrate that it was too heavy for me to lift, because of the course everyone thought I did it as a prank or for attention. My mom took some photos of the room showing where the panel was found. When she got the pictures developed, 2 of them had a weird, wispy, semi-transparent thing in them that nobody could explain. The room had no windows, so it wasn't a strange light reflection, etc. It was definitely not anything that we had seen in the room that day. I'm not a believer in ghosts at all, but this will always be a big what the F moment in my life. I still get creeped out thinking about it. My mom likes to bring out the pictures from time to time, but I still don't like looking at them. I rarely tell the story because it sounds like such a generic, spooky ghost tale that nobody believes us. When I was in high school, my girlfriend at the time and I were watching a movie in the living room. We were the only 2 there as my folks were out of town. My neighbor texted me that he wanted to come over and watch the movie with us, so I said sure, come on by. I got up and locked the door so she could let himself in, and I sat back down on the couch. A few minutes later he shows up and watches the movie with us for maybe half an hour or so before leaving to head back home. As he left, I locked the door again and turned off the kitchen light. Had to walk through the kitchen to get to the back door. When the movie was just about over, I noticed the kitchen light was back on. So I asked my girlfriend if she had turned it on. She replied no, so I shrugged, got back up, and turned it back off. Our back door is wide open. I remember feeling chills going down my spine as I distinctly remember both locking the doors and turning off the light on my way back home. I dated a girl in college who had a twin. For the weeks that she and I went out, when we'd get back to her place, there would be messages from her sister asking about our date. These would be creepy, accurate, things like, "Did you have punch tonight?" or "Did you hear a Beatles song?" These sisters were like that, and it was an everyday thing for them. My ex's sister was 1,000 miles away, and this was long before social media or cell phones.
Do you know any twins that have this kind of unexplainable connection? It's almost psychic. Pretty crazy. I knew a set of twins that were like that. Maybe not to that level, but connected for sure.
One night, my wife and I were in bed. Our son was a baby at the time, sleeping in his crib. Our dog and cat were in the bed with us. My wife wakes me up suddenly, telling me someone is talking in our living room. I grab my gun, flip on the flashlight, and creep into the living room. I hear a voice, but I don't see anyone. There's also a jingling, like a cat toy, coming from the bottom next to me. But, like I said, the cat was in the toy bed on my pillow. I flip on the lights, and the jingle stops. But the voice kept going. That's when I noticed my wife's closed laptop was playing an audiobook. I don't know why, but it just started playing The Red Badge of Courage. I went to the bathroom, of course, and the shower curtain was pulled closed. I'd open it, and inside the tub, just sitting in the middle, was a cat ball with a bell in it. I chalked the computer thing up to being weird tech phenomena, though I'd never seen that before. The moving cat toy in the bathroom? I have no idea. I was maybe 12 years old, living in the countryside with my father. As the toilet was manually emptied, my father urged me to do number ones in the bushes, which I did no problem. One day, our neighbor's mother and sister swung by because our neighbor had died and they came to collect his stuff. A few nights later, I was having a piss in the bushes as I looked to my right and I saw my dead neighbor standing 50 meters away on the road. Was a bit freaked out, but just went back to bed. I was 7 when my family decided to move homes. My parents and older siblings were taking things out to the moving truck while I was standing in the garage. I saw a black tower fan close to my height and figured I should try to be of some help. It was heavy, but I managed to waddle it all the way down the driveway to the back of the moving truck. Once I set it down, I felt super proud of myself for using those strong muscles, as my dad used to say. I genuinely remember this next feeling like it was yesterday. Standing by the truck, facing the house, I then noticed a black tower fan at the top of the driveway. Standing by the truck, facing the house, I then noticed a black tower fan at the top of the driveway. The fan I had just carried was no longer next to me, but right back where it had started. I got shivers all over my body and ran inside the house, scared out of my mind. It took my mom forever to calm me down. To this day, I truly don't understand what happened. A rift, space-time error, some sort of dimensional shift. I don't know. I carried that goddamn fan. When I was in middle school, late elementary school, I just gotten a landline in my room, which was a huge deal. My best friend was over at my house and we were watching TV downstairs. The phone started to ring, and so we immediately started to dart up to my room to answer it. The way my house is laid out, my bedroom was at the end of the hallway, and there were rooms on the side of the hallways. So as we're running, this completely white figure grabs the doorway and peeks out. We both stopped dead in our tracks and screamed, both having seen the scary figure. We ran into my room and slammed the door, not completely sure of what we saw. Multiple times over the past years, I've been outside and seen an all-white figure in the window or in my doorway. It's so scary. I've grown up on a family farm about an hour from a military base. Sometimes they would train in rural areas, just show up in a helicopter, drop a bunch of guys in the middle of the night, and they'd have to navigate their way to some arranged point for extraction. One night about 9 or 10 p.m. this occurred too. It's not too uncommon, but it kept getting louder and louder. We got out the back door, and there's a quarry about 100 yards away from my parents' house. This Huey was hovering maybe 100 feet off the ground and was just off of our property, but on the rock quarry side, and you could see ropes hanging from either side. As we watched, we could hear shouting and shadowy figures sliding down the ropes with green glow sticks attached to them. We just went inside and outside, locked our doors. My parents always chalked it up to a training exercise. In high school, I went to the wake of my friend's first love or serious boyfriend. He'd been shot in the head, very unexpected. Afterwards, we went to the house because she wanted me to stay the night and go to the funeral the next day with her. We were in her bedroom, kinda quiet, kinda talking about the wake, when all of a sudden her boombox turned on. It went straight to the 6 CD disc changer, picked the CD on its own, and started playing their song. Out of all the CDs and all the songs, it turns on to play that one. We both froze and stared at each other like, what the I found out later that his friend who had actually shot him had a similar experience. His radio would turn on by itself and turn up the volume to the max when no one was near it. It would happen when he went to jail for the involuntary manslaughter charges and kept happening when he was released.